Issue 163. We start out with narration by the villain explaining that he wants to ensure that the most powerful threats to Sonic will remain so that he will destroy them. Why? Why can't Sonic just destroy them? I mean, wouldn't that be just harder for him? The first contender is Mammoth Moggle. Sonic taunts Moggle about him using a force field to protect himself, saying that this somehow proves he's not as powerful rather than it being him playing smart. And the Paladin insists the Ancient Walkers are the noblest beings ever to walk the earth, even though they did nothing to take down Eggman or Ixis or Kodos or any of the other evil villains out there, hoarding their magical powers to themselves. Moggle knocks everyone out with a wave of chaos energy instead of killing them like would be smart, because I guess he doesn't want to win, and he takes the crown of acorns just like that. Adam tells Eggman that while the egg grape chamber has cooled down, he doesn't think he should return just yet. While the text box on the left of the panel feels intrusive as it continues on with recapping stuff we already know, saying nothing obviously related to what's at hand, Eggman says suspiciously to Adam that he doesn't think, he analyzes and processes, as if that's different. Adam opens the door, and the narration explains that the dimensional breach had released Ixis from the zone of silence, even though the zone of silence and the zone where Aether was have nothing to do with each other. So was it dimensional breach for all dimensions? Adam's eye lasers somehow do nothing to hurt Ixis, even though they're going right through his body and should fatally damage his vital organs, with only a flimsy justification of he's a master of the elements. He freezes M's lubricants, making it into a statue of ice, which isn't really... like, he has power over water, fire, earth, and air, but this isn't Avatar: The Last Airbender, where water is also ice. So why is he able to freeze literally anything ever, even if it's not water? He says that he's not back for vengeance just yet because he's looking for the mate to the Sword of Acorns. So the sword being held by a spider kid who's willingly worked with him for some reason. I assume from that this wasn't the Sword of Acorns, even though it looks just like it. Why does Ixis want revenge against Eggman again? Isn't this literally the first time they've ever spoken? After Ixis teleports away, because that totally falls within the domain of the four elements. I mean, I guess his body has water in it, but it's also made of other stuff like skin, so would that one go? Eggman hopes that M will thaw out on her own. How? There doesn't seem to be a reheater in this hallway. After Fang taunts the Destructix about being thrown in the cell across from him, he wonders what that light is and is shocked at seeing Mammoth Moggle enable the Destructix's prison break. I guess they really should have stuck with them, but didn't because I guess he was more comfortable working without them. Moggle says that the Destructix's new name for themselves is charming, either that or old-fashioned, whatever definition of quaint he's using. I hate that word. He tells them he wants the Sword of Acorns, and just then he bumps into Ixis. Oh, by mate to the sword, I thought Ixis meant the one carrying the sword, as in the friend to the sword, not the crown. That makes a lot more sense. So Ixis was holding the Sword of Acorns, and Moggle was holding the crown, which means Ixis must have been the one with the spider kids the whole time and not the villain in the narration. Anyways, after Ixis says he's part of the last great order of Isis, a pretty cringeworthy and inexcusable misspelling there, the Freedom Fighters and the Chaotix show up before the two of them can start to fight. Fang squeezes between the bars of his cell, easily escaping it. Wait, what? I mean, that does explain how he escaped the first Knothole prison, but if he could do that, then why didn't he do it the minute he could? What kind of criminal would happily stay in a cell if he didn't have to? And if the logic is he's skinny, well, Snively's skinny too, why didn't he do that? He decides to hit the kitchen on the way out, and leave his former gang buddies a gift, probably as a punishment for hating him now. As I wonder why they would make a cell so poorly made that a criminal would be able to squeeze through the bars. We cut back to a huge fight involving so many characters in one panel that took several tedious seconds for me to look at all of them, including Fiona punching Drago and Sally looking defenseless. Adam then tells Eggman that only the occupied egg grapes were lost in Zone of Silence, because that happened apparently, off-screen. He still retains all of his non-occupied egg grapes. Eggman naturally complains that this doesn't do him any good. Em then shows up back to normal because I guess she went into a reheater, and Adam explains that he's determined how the spider ninjas got here because he's found who orchestrated all of this. He says that Anonymous did it, with the help of Mecha. Mecha is naturally shocked at being accused of conspiring in this, and if it's true, it'll especially be confusing since when she heard of Eggman's draining people plan, she said very good in response to his sadism, even though it was her who was also uncomfortable with it, asking why it was necessary. Adam says he has proof and makes him watch as Mecha is told by a villain that he's organized the Spider Kids, who are still honor bound to serve Ixis because their mother did a while ago. Em agrees that she'll remotely trigger the egg grapes at the right time, and then she and Anonymous can rule together. This really comes out of nowhere. With her how could you forget your darling daughter motive, that makes sense, even if it was just Snively scrambling up her brain. But this is just the robot turns on master for no reason cliche. It's like they're really arbitrarily trying to find a reason to get rid of M. Did the parents hate her or something? Adam then apologizes that he couldn't record who Anonymous is because he somehow used a kind of field to corrupt his data on him. Eggman then immediately proceeds to tell M to initiate self-destruct now, and tells Adam to delete all backups on her data, which Adam says he'll do without hesitation. This is pretty awkward considering he kept calling M his daughter, and Adam and M are like siblings. Then he says to annihilate Project Metal Snively, explaining no more of this henchman nonsense. Hunter couldn't bother to survive a drop into the ocean. My own daughter betrays me. No more of it. What about Snively? He falls under the same categories, and we see him later. Eggman complains that because he wants to prevent Ixis from becoming more powerful, he has to reluctantly help Sonic against them and prevent him from getting the Crown of Acorns. After Eggman is told that his spy satellites, which somehow hadn't detected where Knothole was decades ago, show Ixis fighting Muggle and every major target, Eggman says he just came up with a backup plan. Ixis complains about, something happening, saying that he perfected the crystalline magics. Magics? That's not a word. My spell checker just underlined it. Muggle points out that he's relied too heavily on his zone of silence, which he was more powerful in. Ixis tells Muggle that he'd make a fine pawn when properly possessed, which is a pretty gutsy thing to tell him at a time like this, and Muggle then does, something green. It's not really clear, I just see green fire and wonder why Ixis didn't die from it. Merlin says that Muggle's just toying with him, and he somehow thinks he knows where this is going, so they should all get one of the artifacts while they can. The Horsehead Knight tells him to go for the Sword of Acorns with him protecting him. After they of course get in trouble, and a few storm clouds show up, I wonder if they were summoned by Merlin. Sonic and Knuckles rescue them, with Sonic saying the heartwarming line, "Would you mind not dying? Tails is fond of having a family again." Ixis says to someone I'm guessing is Moggle that he has a mastery of the Ixis magics and had it called his order, and asks if it could really be him. Moggle wastes a few panels of the comic with worthless recap of how he used to rule the world, and then explains that he was the one who formed the Order of Ixis, which makes sense since he's magical too. But somehow, some way, his bid for world domination was crushed by mortals during a somehow forgotten war with the Albion Knights of Aurora. Seriously, how is a war of that significance just forgotten so easily? How could he have lost the war when he's so magical? He tells Ixis that he was once known as Ixis Moggle. Good to know that his parents didn't literally name him Mammoth. That would have been lame. And also made no sense since he was born so long ago that the English word mammoth shouldn't have existed for them to use. Predictably, because the two have a connection together, they're going to join forces and reform the ancient Order of Ixis after thousands of years. Elliot says that Jeffrey is rallying the Palace Guard, as Fiona is expressing compassion, asking if Sonic is okay, and Sonic asks the same about her, causing her to say the charming response, "Peachy." She even talks like him. And Sally shows her jealous side, glaring at them resentfully for it. The story ends with the narration of the villain somehow not being surprised at this turn of events, knowing that Ixis would serve Moggle. You know, there's such a thing as a villain being too effective. Knowing things he shouldn't, being capable of too much. It's called being a villain Sue. This is just a nitpick to me though, because I'd rather a villain be a legitimate threat you want to be defeated so they'll actually care, but it's really ridiculously expected even this. In the next story, Jet the Hawk gets captured by a giant robot from being knocked off his airboard in a futuristic city that would only fit if it was in an alternate zone from the Prime one. Then Sonic says to give exposition to the audience that Nicole told him where the intruder was, and then he immediately gets taunted by Jet and his friends. Didn't Jet just get captured by a robot? I'm starting to feel like all these game adaptations will be horribly written, which makes sense since they only exist to shill a game, and there's something fundamentally impure and insincere about their lack of originality. Oh, okay, it's explained that Jet was recruited by Eggman, and that's why he was captured and not roboticized afterwards. That makes total sense. Not. Jet taunts that he'll move on to Knothole after Sonic's defeated, because he's a one-dimensional villain with no reason for doing anything, and therefore would have no problem with doing that. They all attack Sonic and oh, the story's over. That was it? It will continue on next issue, but that felt very empty. This issue was written by Ian Flynn, and the first story had M somehow agree to self-terminating after being caught betraying Eggman for no apparent reason. You'd think if she was a traitor, she would have refused to self-terminate and instead gone off on her own, since she had the free will to betray him in the first place. If she cares so much about what Eggman thinks of her that she would agree to self-terminate because he said so out of guilt, then why did she try to betray him in the first place? This just comes out of nowhere as a lame excuse to get rid of M. Did the fans hate her because she wasn't in Sad AM, and they did it to please the fans? Is that why they killed off the Ancient Walkers too? Also, Mammoth, Moggle, and Ixis team up because it turns out Moggle formed the Order of Ixis in the first place, and somehow the major villain had predicted this turn of events because bullshit. I highly doubt he knew either of them. So how would he know they would team up? It was epic though, lots of tension. But I was really surprised that Eggman was so quick to do that to his so-called daughter. I thought Sonic would have been the one to do her in. Or even Eve. And the second story is really hollow and basic. Literally all that happens is, Jet gets captured by a robot while going around in a futuristic city totally out of place in Mobius Prime, and instead of being roboticized, he's inexplicably recruited by him and he agrees to the evil plan with no regrets. Why are these guys villains? Why are they helping Eggman? Why wouldn't they hate him just as much as everyone else does? I know they're thieves, but I expect better from a comic. Comics are supposed to explain things better because they're more dedicated to story. It's especially glaring since in the actual Riders games, they fight Eggman alongside Sonic when the time comes. This story just doesn't make any sense, and I don't see how it's supposed to promote the game when its plot does absolutely nothing like it, and yet its plot is so basic with so little happening in it, and none of it makes sense, that I don't see it being originals making it worth anything. It's just there to shill the game. The game adaptations used to be so good, so much care put into them. I'm guessing they only do them because they're forced to by Sega, and Sega didn't care enough to force them to adapt games like Heroes and Shadow and 06, because it really feels like they're just there out of obligation.